So what I want to do is try to, because I guess that many of you are passionate about how we can potentially make a living as a function of positive impact on others, or how can we invest our capital, in something that is meaningful beyond an economic return, and how can we move away from the traditional donation system. So let's go back to school quickly for a moment. If you guys remember, this sort of diagram here, this is supposed to be an arrow like this, and like this. Do you remember that we have the x-axis here and that we had the y over here? Can you guys see? It's kind of challenging. But if you put the individual, on the y, and you put the public or the crowd, everybody else, here on the x. What I understand is that we are in a system that functions like this. The curve would be something like this. The better the individual is doing, the more negatively impacted the crowd or the community is. This is the zero-sum game. This is the capitalistic model as we describe it. This is the wealth concentration. This is, I am because you are not, essentially. Every man for himself. The problem is that the response, I find it to be even worse. Because the response looks something like this. It's a curve that basically shows you that, because people say, socialists say, screw that, wealth concentration, is killing the system. And they're right. Because the most pervasive problem is the misalignment between positive impact, or negative impact really, and return on capital. So here what happens is that the socialists say, okay, so the interest of the crowd is what matters, so the benefit of the crowd, but at the expense of the individual, which is this. And we already know that there cannot be a happy crowd composed of unhappy individuals. That doesn't work. You foster selfishness, in a hidden way, corruption, you foster, it's called Venezuela, guys. That is socialism. So what do? So depending on the politics, we go from one place to another, until we stopped believing in both, because the system is clearly crumbling. There is inverse, the inverse correlation between the stocks and bonds in the market, that it was like the sun goes up, the moon goes down. We're living in an environment since 2007 where both come up, when they want. So that doesn't work, the fundamentals are not there, and people are fearing something systemic happening out there, which I agree with you, it's a great thing, because the story in my mind is coming to an end. Now there's another quadrant here, for countries like Syria, where essentially the crowd is doomed and the individuals are also doomed, they manage to perfect, the inverse model. Now the thing here is that I do believe, and I want to try to prove it, conceptually speaking at least, that we can't have the individual self-interest, like in capitalism, as a function of positive impact on the crowd. And that would be this quadrant right here. See it, you have the more positive impact the individual, or the more positive impact the crowd gets, the more benefit for the individual fostering that impact. In a way, why is it that we cannot allow ourselves to think that we can potentially do better for ourselves, by focusing on doing more impact for the community? Why is it that we have that? I was really interested in understanding why positive impact has to come as a sacrifice on your own individual gain. Why is it that we always need to make the decision between our own individual interest and helping others? Why is it that profiting individually makes us feel guilty? Why is it that being rich is a sin? And why is it that being poor is, even more expensive than anything else. So here is the thing. If you analyze this quickly over here, I would have to tell you this. I need 3 volunteers. I need $1 from 3 people. Anybody can lend me a couple of $1. It has to be $1.
Do you take plastic or?
$1. So $1. What's your name? Adam. So we have Adam here with his dollar. And then you are?
Gerald.
How do you spell that? You know, I'm from Colombia. And then another dollar over here. Thank you, sir. You are?
Blair.
Blair. Blair. I saw a movie with your name that terrified me, you know, when I was young. And then, I still remember it. So here is the thing. Let's say that Adam, Gerald, and Blair, they all invest $1. You would say that the dollar is exactly the same, right? This one, and this one, and this one. Because we think that the dollar is a unit of value. That's what we think. But I want to show you something. Let's assume, you know, that the dollar is not a unit of value, but it is a code that activates itself depending on who holds it. And that changes. Here is the example. Let's say that Adam is an accredited investor, a billionaire. So his dollar, when he invests that dollar, would potentially get 18 cents on the dollar on a yearly basis. Now let's say that Gerald is very successful, but not as successful as Adam, you know. His return would get to be probably 6 to 8 cents on the dollar. And Blair, okay, who would be just like everybody else, would potentially get, you know, for his dollar, 2 cents. So what happens is that, you know, that we are living in a system where the return on each dollar is dependent on the amount of wealth each individual previously had. And I want to try to show you why that happens. Because we don't stop to think, what is that? And what got me thinking about this was the notion of smart contracts in the cryptocurrencies. Because when I started analyzing that, and that you could truly define the algorithm that would define as well how a relationship between individuals would be regulated, I said, that's it. The dollar is the smartest contract of them all. And I want to show you. Picture that this block right here is, okay, everybody, oh, hold on. I don't want to keep your dollars, guys. Thank you. I want to show you this. In 1933, right after the Great Depression, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the Securities Act. And in the Securities Act, it made everybody register to avoid fraud, which was a very noble thing to do. But he also said, and this, let's say that this block is the public market. He created an exception, okay? And he said, we're going to create there an exception, you know, that we're calling private equity, where only accredited investors can invest because they know better. And we're going to protect the public from fraud. So if you think about it, if you have a room like this with 95 people, and you have a VIP over there with 5 people, the public and the VIP, they all can invest in the public offerings. But only the ones up there can invest in the private offerings. You couldn't even solicit, you couldn't even advertise the private offerings because it would have been an illegal private offering by law in 1933, in a time when there wasn't even TV. So here is the thing. Let's analyze the consequences of this. private offering and public offering separation, if you are a member of the public and you find an incredible opportunity, okay, and you cannot register to be a public security, it's kind of impossible, and you find a building, and you know real estate, but you just don't have the capital, okay, but you have the expertise, you're a developer, and you can possibly do it, you were forced by law to take it to the ones in the private equity world on that VIP, because the public was being protected from fraud, okay? So that also means, that imagine the psychological and socioeconomical consequences of this. This is precisely why the three of you get different returns, because if you are here, okay, and let's go back to Peter, Paul, and Mary so that I can remember a better example. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Let's say that Paul is an entrepreneur and he comes up with a great idea about how to replace fossilized fuels for a biomass plant. Now, let's make that example to be this. Because what I'm trying to give you is a practical takeaway to understand this recontextualization of money. Let's say that this guy was working, for the Occidental Petroleum forever. He learned his skill set, he has a ton of experience, and somehow he has an aha moment and he says, what is it that I'm doing with this life of isolation, working just for myself, neglecting everything else? When that happens, basically the guy will say, okay, I can do a biomass plant. Let's make a random example. Let's say that the biomass plant costs $60 million. Let's say that he can create energy for a city with 500,000 people. That would be amazing. And that he can sell the plant, once built, to a distributor of energy for $100 million. Okay? And this is an example, $100 million. We gotta get better Sharpies. And then the profit would be $40 million. $60 million cost, $100 million sellout, $40 million profit. What happens to this guy in the world of the, let me take back my previous slide. He would have to go to the ones in the VIP, okay, of private equity, and say to them, guys, I'm an expert, I have the blueprint, I can build this plant, give me the $60 million, and we'll do this together, and we'll bring energy to 500,000 people. That's an amazing proposition. That's perfect alignment of a return on capital and positive impact. The issue is the glitch in the contract of that dollar. Because those guys would basically tell you, I don't know, show me what you can do. So let's say that the private equity, how it's called, right? Private equity fund. Then you have the entrepreneur. You can say Peter, Paul, and Mary over here, and the crowd of basically, and I want to show you this here. I don't know if you can see. But the $40 million is the pie to split. The $40 million is the pie to split. So you would basically go, okay, let's split the $40 million. I can build a plant, and how do we do that? It normally through a waterfall, 8 to 12% preferred return, 80-20 plus a 2, whatever. You end up with less than 10% as an entrepreneur. So let's say that the $36 million would go to the private equity, $4 million to the entrepreneur, okay, after going through everything, and conditioning you and boxing you in to whatever they want to restrict you with because they're coming up with the money. And they're kind enough to tell you, let's go 50-50, but you gotta put, $30 million. That's the way the conversation goes. When this guy has the idea, and the expertise, and all they have is the money. That is where, in that previous quadrant, we are in a system that rewards capital over everything else. Now, here is the thing. And the crowd makes basically zero, okay? Thanks to the most amazing law in the past 80 years, if you ask me, which is called the Jobs Act. The VIP here in this thing got eliminated. Now everybody has access for all. The problem that we have is that some brilliant journalists decided to call it crowdfunding. And that immediately puts you at the level of Kickstarter and everything else. And people dismissed it. Forget about that. We're living in an environment for the past 4 years, guys, where the public has access to the enclaves of wealth concentration in this country. Those that have protected and preserved capital for 80 years, okay? One of them being commercial real estate, which is this building that you see right here. So imagine that that VIP opened up to assets with proven track record. Not only this, what other private offerings are out in there, actually, you know, for the public to grab. So here is the thing. That entrepreneur now, thank you, that entrepreneur now basically turns around and looks at the private equity guy very differently. He says like, let me talk to my 500,000 friends. And he gets a microphone like this, you know, which is called social media, and little videos, and technology. And he tells them, guys, you need a plant. We all need a plant. We all know better than anybody how much we need this plant. I can build them. Here are my references. Ask your friends whether they want to check with transparency how capable I am for building this plant or not. And you know what? I'm going to build the plant based on what you need and no one else. But I want you to own it with me. Not only you are making this plant viable, okay? Not only are you doing that, but you are also enjoying the benefit of making an investment in the solution of a problem that you have, and you're doing it, you know, for a profit. Give me the $60 million, we'll put it in escrow with a third-party fund administrator, and we will split the $40 million profit, and you'll make $20 million. So you go from 0 to 20. And then I go from $4 million, and if you're making 20, would you feel okay if I make 10? You know, which is 50% of what you make, $10 million. And then, instead of the private equity fund, we can use a crowdfunding platform, because I know about plants, and you want to invest. I have no idea on how to raise money or do anything like this. What if they make another $10 million? So essentially this means, okay, if you remember the first graph, why is it that we cannot allow ourselves to believe that we can potentially do so much better for ourselves individually as a function of positive impact on others? Because in this case, clearly, the private equity goes down replaced by the crowdfunding platform from $36 to $10 million, right? So that is a reduction of 90% of wealth concentration, because 36 over 40, you know, is 90%, to 25%. And then you get the entrepreneur to make 2.5x, 250 times, you know, 250%, I'm sorry, 250% more than what he made when he was subjugated to the private equity. Now he's free to put all his creativity out there and work exclusively for those who are really investing in the solution of that problem. And the crowd goes from 0 to 50%. So in a way, there is a system that rewards ideas over concentration of capital in an interaction through technology with the crowd that can now align positive impact and return on capital. And people are growing to understand, because I bet you another dollar, 21 of the 3, the billionaire over there, oh no, you're the billionaire, right? And then, you know, that if I can make 11% return on a plant that is socially conscious, in collaboration with the community that is investing in this, versus doing potentially 12 or 13%, I'm telling you that I would choose this one any day. Now, this is exactly level 1 of what we can do with large-scale crowdfunding. We have a portfolio, guys, of $1.2 billion, and I don't say it to brag about it. I just want you to understand the incredible possibilities that there are, where people can come together and invest not only in assets that were privy to the very wealthy before, but like this power plant, in projects that weren't possible altogether before, just because they didn't meet certain standard. One that is very close to my heart. So much. I want to make reference to one point that Donna was making, that is very important. One of the natural questions when we came up with this crowdfunding model was that people asked us, okay, what about the institutional investors and what about the billionaires? Don't they feel threatened about this? Quite frankly, in the beginning, we didn't even consider that, And when we presented the model, we worked, for example, with large, very traditional families like the Cormans in Philadelphia. There are 4th-generation developers with thousands of units across the United States. And we presented them with the model, and they said, I love it. Now I can invest with you in 5 or 6 different projects as opposed to in one. And you know what? That's so nice. I'm very interested in knowing what the community has to say on how we're going to develop this and how we're going to develop that. Co-investing in that, is the most interesting thing that we could do. And we're doing with them, our 3rd building already. So it isn't frictional. There is no antagonism whatsoever because nobody's taking anything from anybody. It's a function, that enables everybody to invest and participate in different fields. We have an institutional pension fund with whom we co-invest now because we want to bring the best quality assets to the market, that we buy it together according to their criteria, and then we crowdfund them out to a point where they're comfortable in staying because they need to obviously meet the 3 to 7 year criteria. When the crowd, is interested in long-term investments. So it's very complementary, it's truly probably the solution because if you think about it, the point is that Peter, Paul, and Mary now would have the same return for the dollar they invested. So the 3 of you here, irrespective of the amount of money you each one individually had before, would team together and make the investment of, I don't remember who was the billionaire, but would get there together. And that is the way we change the context on which we relate to other in the realm of money.
Great. I'm sure there are a lot of people.
Beautiful. I would say, that if you project further in the future, I really believe, that now that we understand that thanks to the form on which smart contracts are defined to create cryptocurrencies, that basically regulates different algorithm, other than I take as much as possible, neglecting everybody else, and that separation between, that activates itself on return based on how much money you have before. I don't believe in coincidences, and don't get me going on conspiracy theories about that one, and who invented that one, so long ago. It's very patriarchal, and very feudalistic as well, that's who we were back then. It's as simple as that. I think that we're ready for reinventing a new code of money. And I believe that one is going to create reward based on merit and how much your idea. I dream of a currency, in a decentralized system and a global currency where you are incentivized and truly motivated to put all your energy in how much positive impact you can bring, to this planet, and that you will be rewarded as a function of such. That truly will get the best out of you so that you can combine the skill set and experience, that align perfectly well with your talent so that you don't need to break yourself in two between helping people, and making a living.
Right. Hey. And this man's got a mic.
Yes. I want to first say that you guys are all incredibly inspiring because obviously a lot of people are here because they share some core values here, and it feels incredible that we're not alone. And gives each of us strength. And thank you for that. We own a co-living space actually in Brooklyn, and it's a really, really small operation. It's also consciously oriented, so this is incredibly inspiring. I want to say, Rodrigo, it's a beautiful vision. And my question is a little bit of a functional one for entrepreneurs that are looking to follow a similar path. What would you say, almost like quick tip or a 1, 2, 3 punch? It's not that simple, obviously, but where to head for crowdfunding or how to get started if you have to point in the right direction.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. The first thing that I will tell you is that you need to start realizing that we cannot be defined by what we know. And that we need to start believing that we can be more than what we see. And by that, you would have to incorporate as a sort of phase conjugation with a coefficient that would potentially create a value distribution model where you would see how you are also defined by the unknown. In simpler words, surrender to the fact that there's some things that you can imagine, If a fish is in a fish tank, it has no idea what water is. It is only when somebody puts bubbles in there, or a little bit of blue tint, or somebody removes him from the water and puts him back in, that it will realize, that there is much more than that. So don't let yourself be bound by the ignorance driven by what we can certainly validate. Because if you have run out of answers in this system, I have too. But what I can tell you, is that there's plenty of information and consciousness out there. You just gotta surrender to filling the gaps in that puzzle of reality that we cannot possibly comprehend with myth. And you will see how that creates, some sort of an induced deja vu in here, and you don't need that to validate that. You just gotta pursue it, provided, that the standard is kept. And that means, that you're only doing positive impact as a function of making a living.